As mentioned previously, that the nominal wage, whatever the money that you received, might not be the same as the real wage, right? So the real wage is a better measure of what a worker earns in terms of purchasing power. So the real wage and nominal wage, let's define it. The nominal wage means the wage in current dollars, but the real wage is the nominal wage, but we adjust it for inflation. So the term money illusion that mentioned earlier causes workers to irrationally focus on their nominal wage instead of their real wage. So they might then insist on real wages that are too high given changes in the price level. So this is very important, right? What I want you to take away from this is for your future wage negotiations, right? So if the price level say increases more than your nominal wage, then that is the real wage cut. If the price level increases less than your nominal wage, that is the real wage increase. If the price level in the nominal wage increases or increased by the same amount, so there is no change in the price level, and no change in the real wage. Sorry about that. So if the price level falls and there's no change to the nominal wage, actually a real wage increase. Okay, so basically the nominal wage is analogous to nominal GDP, right? Remember? So price level change is an inflation. So for example, this one. Suppose nominal wages increase by 3% and prices go up by 5%. This is actually, if you have the money illusion, you would think yourself as a wealthier, but actually your real wages have actually decreased, right? So that is the money illusion right there. So the real wage and the nominal wage, you have to be careful. All right, so the next cost of inflation is called a menu cost. So menu costs, these consider the tangible costs to firms for change like prices. For example, if Walmart chooses to increase prices, they must reprint all price labels using capital to do so, right? And input and labor, hours to replace the price tag. So that is the cost of changing prices. So the cost to Walmart will be the paper, the ink, the rental cost of printing machines and workers. They're all part of the menu cost, right? The name come from a restaurant. If the price will change, then they have to print new menus for price changes, those kind of thing. So again, uncertainty about the future price level. In a normal production process, funds must be spent today, right? Like I mentioned earlier, and then repaid in the future after the output sells. So, but for these sequence of events to occur, businesses must make promises to deliver payments in the future, including payments to workers and lenders. So the two types of long-term agreements form the foundation for production, right? So the wages and the loan contract. So both of these involve agreements for dollars to be delivered in the future. In other words, firms may have to borrow today and pay back the money later. Uncertainty regarding the future prices makes loans and contracts subject to inflation risk. If the price level is not accurately predicted, this can impose costs on lenders or borrowers, depending on the direction of the magnitude of the inflation, or is it deflation. Okay, so now the next diagram kind of depict what I just talked about. And because of the inflation, the next one is called wealth redistribution between the borrower and the lenders, just to illustrate the last point that we just made. Okay, so if inflation unexpectedly rises during these the years that you borrowing money, right? Suppose you borrow $50,000 and expect to pay back $60,000 in 5 years. If the inflation is unexpected and then it happened, you are better off, right? And bank is worse off. So the surprise inflation redistributes wealth from the lenders to the borrowers. That makes sense? You are borrowers, right? You are better off, banks is worse off. If the inflation was expected, okay, if both you and the bank fully expect the inflation to happen, so the bank will require more in return from for the loan. So inflation will have no redistribution effect, right? Bank would have required more in return for the loans, If is a deflation and unexpected, okay? Deflation increase your future real payment to the bank, right? So you are worse off, but bank is better off, okay? So this good slide to come back and study. All right, the next one kind of summarizes what we just did in a different way, okay? Price confusion. Are price changes a result of demand shifts or the inflation, right? So implication is very different. For example, if the price increase is the result of an increase in the demand, firms then will want to hire new workers, build factories, and then spend money on new resources, right? Expansion, right? Increase the output. But if the price increase caused by inflation, there's no change in the output, just prices, right? That's change. So the implication very different, so very careful in doing so. A next cost of inflation is the tax distortion. So, okay, the term capital gain, let's see what that means. The capital gains, for example, capital gains, the best way to explain this would be you own a share of stock in the stock market, and when you own it, let's say you buy it for $10, but when you sell it, the price is like $20. So the capital gains for you is 20 minus 10, the $10 capital gains. You have to pay taxes on the capital gains, all right? So the capital gains taxes are taxed on the gains realized by selling an asset for more than its purchase price. So the problem often is that the price that, we see an increase in the price is nothing but due to inflation rather than increase in the value of the good. Let's take a look at an example on the next slide. Example. If you buy a house in the year 1980 and the price of the house is $80,000, and then you live in that house and many years passed and you sell the house in year 2012 for the price of $230,000. That's a huge jump, right? The capital gains is $150,000, right? 230,000 minus the 80,000, the capital gains become the $150,000. So you have to pay taxes on this $150,000. However, when you check the CPI in year 1980 is only 80, and the CPI in year 2012 is 230. So the real value of the house is basically the same, right? It's just increased because of the price level change. It's not the value of the asset at all. So, all right. Now, in order to make those numbers comparable, right? This is what we did, the conversion of those Coca-Cola, Hershey's chocolate bar, and Oreo cookies, and those things that we did. We need to use a formula, right? If we want to convert the price to be today's price, we need to use the earlier price multiplied by the relative price between the 2 years, okay? So we can do more of this exercise together. All right. We have the summary here for those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 costs of inflation, and I hope you will come back to this table 8.4 and spend a little time trying to understand them all. Now, the last part, what costs inflation then? Okay, there's no debate on the cost of the inflation. Inflation is a continued rise in the general price level. Don't forget that. This definition helped us focus on the long-term price level changes. So the cost of inflation is when a nation's money supply increases too quickly. This is one of the no debate, right? Always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. Okay, Milton Friedman said so, that expansions in the nation's money supply will cause inflation. So, however, not all price increases are caused by inflation, right? When the relative price of just one good rises, people sometimes call it inflation, which is not true. So now I'm going to introduce to you how to link the money supply, this nation money supply, to the price level. Okay. On the next slide, you're going to see a very famous equation. It's called equation of exchange, right? Introduced by this Milton Friedman, a Nobel Prize economist. Okay, so here we go. Equation of exchange. This is showing the long run or long-term relationship between the price level P and the quantity of money M. All right, so let's identify all of these terms, please. M is the quantity of money in circulation, money supply. V stands for velocity of money, how many times that money will change hands. All right, and P is the price level, the CPI or the GDP deflator that we talked about. But in this case, the P should be the GDP deflator because Y is the real GDP. So basically, price level times the real GDP. This part is the nominal GDP. So it makes sense to use the GDP deflator as the price index here. So the money supply in circulation, okay, the amount of money in circulation should be enough, right? Taking into account how many times that money is going to change hand, this total amount of money in circulation should be enough to buy those goods and services in nominal term. That's what it say. Okay, again, the right hand side here of this equation is the nominal GDP, and the velocity of money is the number of times a unit of money exchanges hands in a given year. It represents the speed at which the currency circulates. The quantity of money includes paper, currency, and coins, and we will do this later in the upcoming chapters. And the money includes whatever we use in exchange for goods and services. So for this reason, the equation of exchange is actually an identity, right? By definition, right? So it's identity. It's not like showing something fancy. It's just identity. Now, when you distribute the percentage change through this formula in the growth rate kind of formula, it looks like this, okay? The growth rate of the money plus the growth rate of the velocity should equal to the growth rate of the price level, which is the inflation, plus economic growth, okay? So this little thing is called delta. It's the percentage change in the amount of money supply plus the percentage change in the velocity should equal to the percentage change of the price level, which is the inflation rate, plus the percentage change in the real GDP, which is economic growth. Okay, we are going to assume that we have a constant velocity, so that means this term is 0, right? So it comes down that, okay, if price level is greater than 0, meaning we have some inflation, then inflation will happen when the money supply is growing faster than economic growth, the real GDP, right? If this is larger than the real GDP change, then we will see inflation. That's what it said. Inflation happen if the growth rate of the money supply is greater than the growth rate of the real GDP. Sorry. We would have deflation, right? Percentage change in the price level is negative if the economy or the rate of growth of the real GDP is larger than the money supply. So not enough money to buy the goods and services, then we will have the deflation. Okay? So if we have no inflation or we want to have no inflation, then the amount of money supply growth should be the same growth rate as the GDP. Okay, so here we go. Conclusion, last one. Right, CPI is the foundation of the inflation calculation because it measures the purchasing power of the money, right, the cost of living. So the macroeconomic costs of continued price rises include basically the uncertainty, right? There will be big problems. And I only put a couple of things here so you can take a look at that table again, the menu cost, the money illusion, and so on. All right, let's conclude chapter 8.